The germ theory states that germs cause disease. Now, if the germ theory is correct, surely all we have to do is find something that will kill the germ. Have we got enough things to kill germs, ladies and gentlemen? Have you seen, it's a multi-million dollar industry, it's the pharmaceutical industry, isn't it? In fact, there are two multi-million dollar industries, actually there's three now. Number one is the junk food industry. And because of the junk food industry, people aren't working well, that's produced the pharmaceutical industry that comes along trying to fulfill what Louis Pasteur stated, that germs cause disease. But I tell you what, if germs do cause disease and we've got a multi-million dollar industry built on drugs to kill germs, why aren't people getting better? In fact, are people getting sicker? They are. Well, there's another multi-million dollar industry born out of the frustrations from people who aren't getting better from the drugs, and that is the vitamin industry. Am I right? Is it working? I would like to suggest to you that it is not working. And there's a very famous nurse called Florence Nightingale. She knew the true cause of disease, and I'll show you why in a minute. And when she read of Louis Pasteur's theory, who was a contemporary at her time, she said, this is the theory of a man of a very unstable mind. And she said, and anyone who believes it is equally unstable. Whew. Well, what did Florence Nightingale believe? Well, Florence Nightingale was born to very wealthy parents. She was educated, which was very unusual for a woman of her day. And she wanted to help people. And so at the ripe old age of about 28, she was that age before her father let her start to work in institutions for wealthy young women who were fainting because their corsets were too tight, or etc., etc. She said in her book the only time she was happy when she had parcels of food and she was going to the little villages to help the poor. Her sister Parthe loved the wealthy life, loved the parties, sewing a fine seam and painting watercolours, but Florence Nightingale said it drew no satisfaction to her. So by the time she was about 33, she'd gained a little bit of experience, well actually quite a bit of experience in the line of nursing. She was very interested in how the institutions ran, and so she put in a lot of procedures, so that was basically her role. Well, it was about 1856 and the Crimean War was happening, and the message got back to the British government that the French soldiers were being better looked after than the British soldiers. It's usually political, isn't it? And so the British government asked Florence to take 35 nurses to Sukhati, which was the port where the wounded from the Crimean War were being taken. When she got there, the conditions were appalling. The hospital was ex-army Turkish barracks. The plumbing didn't work. There was raw sewage in the corridors. The conditions were appalling, and the death rate in that hospital was 50%. You had a better chance on the battlefront than you had in that hospital. But when she came in, the doctor said, we don't need you, and you're not coming in here. They sent her to the kitchen. She went to the kitchen, it was filthy. There were huge big pots of water with a bit of rotten meat in it. There was the food. Because the plumbing wasn't working, 30 men were going to one chamber pot. The stench was horrific. She found one man who'd been there 2 weeks and hadn't been attended. They were just overflowing with wounded. So Florence Nightingale did what she could, scrub the kitchen, got the kitchen working. Meanwhile, she telegrammed her father. She said, I want a shipload of clean linen, clean bedclothes, clean mattresses, clean bandages, and a cook. As you will see as we go through the lecture this morning, body cannot heal without nourishment. It's like asking a builder to build a house but not providing the building material. 2.5 weeks later, another shipload of wounded came in. The hospital was already at its limits, so the doctor said to Florence and her nurses, all right, you can come in. They hated her. Do you know she made them wash their hands between operations? The first thing Florence did was she got her nurses to start scrubbing and cleaning, opening the windows. She got men to assess the plumbing to see, you know, if you don't turn the tap off, you're not going to be You're still going to be mopping up, aren't you? Within, I think it was about October she arrived, November 1856. By 1857, I think it was about April, the death rate had gone down to 10%. Within a full 6 months, the death rate was 2%. Wow. When she went back to England, she was hailed as a heroine. When she found that was going to happen, she slipped down the back gangplank and went home. She said, I'm not a heroine. She said, all I did was increase the hygiene, the sanitation, and the nutrition. She knew germs don't cause disease. She said germs are the result of unhealthful conditions. She made that hospital such that there was nowhere for them to live. Their role on the planet is to clean up the place. You see that? In fact, on his deathbed, Louis Pasteur refuted his theory. This is what he said. I have about 4 books where his deathbed confession is quoted. Bernard was right. Who's Bernard? Claude Bernard was a contemporary at the time of Pasteur. Claude Bernard believed it was not germs, it was the condition of the body. And this is what Pasteur said on his deathbed. Bernard was right. The microbe is nothing. The organism is everything. And isn't that true? It is not the microbe, it's the environment. Florence Nightingale, she didn't come in with drugs to kill every microbe. She just cleaned up the environment so they weren't there anymore. Just basic common sense, isn't it? So the germ theory has been very popular, and it still is to some extent. But another theory has almost surpassed it. They're actually equal. I call them the 2 Gs. 1953, headlines in the newspaper, secret of life has been discovered. Watson and Crick's had been able to unravel the DNA. And from that time on, the second G came in to be blamed as the cause of all disease. It's the gene. Is it the germ or is it the gene? Notice with both theories, it takes away all responsibility on the human being for what is happening in them. So they are very convenient theories. You see, if the human body was designed to heal itself, and if it's not healing itself, one must ask this. This little 3-letter word will remain here all week. And it's the law of action and reaction. It's Newton's 3rd law of motion. To every action, there is an equal and an opposite reaction. If a body is not healing when it's given certain conditions, one has to put the detective hat on and ask, why? Why is this happening and why isn't it healing? And what's the definition of insanity? To do what you've always done and expect different results. If it's not working, change the conditions until the body says, yeah, this works. And as I spoke about last night, you're the doctor. If the body says, I like this, what's it saying? Yeah, do this. Let's have a look at the gene. Here is the cell. And the cell must be looked at because that's what we are. We're just a bunch of cells. We have hair cells, eye cells, tissue cells, bone cells, skin cells, liver cells, kidney cells. And most of the cells are much the same, and they run much the same. Yesterday in your live blood analysis, you saw the size of the cell. 250 million red blood cells on 1 drop of blood. Now, when I'm speaking about the cell, I'm not speaking about the red blood cell because the red blood cell is a little different. It doesn't have a nucleus. You see, it's in the nucleus that the DNA is. The red blood cell is the carrier, and it's the carrier of nourishment taking it to these cells so that they've got oxygen, so they've got water, so that they have got nourishment, so the waste can be taken away. So Watson and Crick's in 1953 were able to unravel this DNA. If you pull that DNA out, it's 2 meters long. Wow. Let's have a look at the DNA unraveled. 23 chromosomes from my mother. 23 chromosomes from my father. The information is all stored up in the DNA on how to make a new body. And did you know we're constantly being remade? Our eye cells are remade every 2 to 3 days. That's why people that have eye operations, they recover very, very quickly. The next cell that